Something didn't sit right with me about Hurricane Helene, and now that we have Milton turning into a Category 5, making landfall by Tuesday morning, I had to go research and do a little bit of digging to find a document that I want to share with you. And it's so powerful because it's one thing to coin things, a conspiracy theory, if you just have words coming out your backside. But it's a whole other thing when you actually have documented proof. And I found a document. This document comes from 1996, and it's called Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. This was released by the Air Force. It's a military document, and it was made available to the public. It's right in front of us, predictive programming. And if you still don't believe after seeing this and being able to have access to it, because I'm going to drop a link for you guys, I want you to read it for yourself, then I'm sorry to say that you have fallen prey to ideological subversion. Now, I want you to understand this because I'm going to pull the curtain back on something that I want you to see. It's been happening for decades. This isn't something new. And this has been something that the U.S. military has been working on to control the weather. And the document essentially outlines how it's been planning to control the weather and weaponize it for military purposes. So I'm not just talking about, manipulating weather as a tool, just for whatever. It's for war. And they're using it to influence battlefields, not overseas, but from what it seems and what we're witnessing right now is that this is being used against us here at home domestically. And this isn't new either. Our government's involvement in weather modification has been going on for decades. If you want to give it some context, we can talk about the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye, where they cloud seeded and basically saturated and extended out the monsoon season to cut off all the supply lines and route to the Vietnamese. So when you hear about extreme weather today, you got to ask how much of it is natural versus how much of it is actually being manufactured and used against us. So I want to get into some of the facts because this document was released again in 1996, and I emphasize that point for a specific reason because I want you to understand what we're up against here. Now, the goal, they say in this document, is to own the weather by 2025. What does that mean exactly? Well, according to this, the military's aim is to have the ability to modify and control weather patterns for military superiority. And here's a direct quote that comes from the document itself on page 2. It says, weather modification offers the warfighter a wide range of possible options to defeat or coerce an adversary. But in this case, who's the adversary? Because are we waging war against another military operation, another country? Or is it war that's being waged against us, a coup that's coming to take over and is now using this against the American people? Why would that be? Is it because people have woken up and are no longer asleep to the madness that's taking place and they're fighting back and resisting? Could that be it? Think about that for a second. So they want to own this weather. They want to coerce. And the report goes on to explain that this includes storm enhancements, precipitation denial. It talks about space weather modification. And so they're looking at ways to intensify storms, block rainfall, create droughts. And these are just some of the tactics that they're looking to use and the technologies that they've been working on. So one of the most shocking details and parts of this document that I was reading through last night is using storms as weapons. And on page 2, it outlines the idea of using these storm enhancements, if you will, to disrupt enemy operations. And it's not speculation anymore. It's right here. And so the military is exploring ways to control these storms and make them more destructive. So imagine for a second if you can take a natural storm and direct it where you want it to go. It would look naturally occurring. You would never be able to tell who did it. And here's an excerpt from the document again. Page 4 says, in this case, or in the case of a hurricane, for example, it says, modifications might include intensifying the storm, steering it towards a desired location, or modifying its direction or intensity. So in this case, a hurricane can be taken, they can steer it where they want it to go. So when a massive hurricane seems unusually intense or takes unprecedented paths or unexpected turns, we have to wonder, is this part of their plan? And could storms like this be intentionally intensified and directed like what we've seen recently. Again, this is from 1996. And another chilling piece about this puzzle is their focus on precipitation denial. What does that mean? It means that they can keep who they want rain going to and withdraw it or withhold it from who they don't want receiving it, right? They can control the rainfall. So on page 3, the report talks about how they could deny rainfall in certain areas to create droughts. And basically by creating droughts, weather anomalies like wildfires and fires that are taking place caused by massive wind. Where have we seen that take place? Lahaina? Hawaii? We think about why this would be important to them. Well, this is again in the document. It says that it would be to destroy crops, create food shortages, and oh, guess what? Drive people off of their land. So on page 3, it says precipitation denial can impact agricultural production, damage economic stability, and induce population displacement. Wow. Tells us right there. So imagine the power is given to them. If they want to cripple a country or a people, parts of the US, they can literally turn off the rain. Droughts aren't just natural disasters anymore. They're tools for control. And another aspect of this that I think is extremely important is ionospheric modification. And this connects to technologies like HAARP, which is the big word right now. Everybody's talking about HAARP. Well, what is HAARP? On page 5 of this document, it discusses directed energy weapons like HAARP, which is High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. And so it's been long suspected of being a way to influence weather patterns by using energy beams to alter the atmosphere. And so the document explains on page 5, it says modification of the ionosphere can disrupt enemy communications while enhancing their own and also influencing weather patterns over large areas. So this means that they're actively working on different ways to utilize these energy weapons to change the weather patterns. And this can be done without anybody knowing because a storm could appear natural, even when in reality it's being controlled by a directed energy weapon. So the ability to disrupt the ionosphere can lead to changes in the overall jet streams, and that's how water basically moves around the earth. And these patterns can look like natural disasters. And we've seen this happen over and over again, more so recently. So the scariest part to me is not just the fact that it's a military operation and can be used as such, but global control is really what the goal is here, if we just want to get down to it. So page 6 of this document talks about weather modification can be used to destabilize economies, disrupt food production, force political changes. What, like making people not be able to get out and vote because they're having to worry about saving their life? Well, yeah, which one do you think they're going to choose? So in a world where water scarcity and climate change are becoming critical issues, controlling weather gives whoever owns the technology that absolute power. And weather modification ultimately could influence global food supplies, control water resources, and be used as a geopolitical tool. And I want to be very clear, because if the military can control the weather, they can control essentially everything. They can create natural disasters, force populations to move, control the food supply, and even topple governments. And this is the ultimate form of invisible warfare, because we could be potential targets and have no idea, think it's completely naturally occurring. So I want to lay this out there. And again, I'm linking this document for you guys so you can check it out for yourself, because I want you to see it. I want you to read it. I want you to know that it's not coming from my lips. It's not some conspiracy theory. And so what it brings to light is, if this is happening, are we going to continue to sit back and allow ourselves to believe the lie that they are not using these tools? Or are we finally going to wake up and break free from this matrix and call it out? Because that's the ultimate thing here. How much more are you going to stay there, be silent, and do nothing about this? Or when are we going to finally get to the point to say enough is enough? And that's the question I want to pose to you. Something didn't sit right with me about Hurricane Helene and theory if you just have words coming out your backside. But it's a whole other thing when you actually have documented proof. And I found a document. This document comes from 1996, and it's called Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. This was released by the Air Force. It's a military document. and it was made available to the public. It's right in front of us, predictive programming. And if you still don't believe after seeing this and being able to have access to it, because I'm going to drop a link for you guys, I want you to read it for yourself, then I'm sorry to say that you have fallen prey to ideological subversion. Now, I want you to understand this because I'm going to pull the curtain back on something that I want you to see. It's been happening for decades. This isn't something new. And this has been something that the U.S. military has been working on to control the weather. And the document essentially outlines how it's been planning to control the weather and weaponize it for military purposes. So I'm not just talking about